Hello, I'm Tanya Beckett. President Biden has appealed for the more than 1 million Palestinians sheltering in Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip to be protected, once again urging Israel not to carry out a big assault without a credible plan for the safety of civilians. He was speaking after meeting the Jordanian monarch, King Abdullah, in Washington. The king has repeatedly pushed for a full truce to end the conflict that started when Hamas attacked Israel on October the 7th. On Monday morning, a series of Israeli airstrikes there killed at least 70 people, with Israel warning of an impending ground offensive. More than half of Gaza's population now live in Rafah. The potential for a ground campaign has sparked alarm from Israel's allies, including the United States.
As the King and I discussed today, the United States is working on a hostage deal between Israel and Hamas, which would bring an immediate and sustained period of calm to Gaza for at least 6 weeks, which we could then take the time to build something more enduring.
Nearly 100,000 people have been killed, injured, or are missing. The majority are women and children. We cannot afford an Israeli attack on Rafah. It is certain to produce another humanitarian catastrophe. The situation is already unbearable for over 1 million people who have been pushed into Rafah since the war started. We cannot stand by and let this continue. We need a lasting ceasefire now. This war must end.
Well, for more analysis on King Abdullah's visit to Washington, here's our North America correspondent, Nomia Iqbal.
This was a very significant meeting in that King Abdullah is the first Arab leader to meet President Biden since October the 7th, and the king has been very open about what he thinks should be happening. And he's laid those goals out to President Biden. We heard it in his statement. He wants an immediate, long-lasting ceasefire. He also wants humanitarian aid to be sent into Gaza. He's worried about the military operation in Rafah. And he also wants a long-term solution, a two-state solution. These are all issues that President Biden has also raised. And King Abdullah is meeting President Biden where the tone has slightly changed in Washington. Last week, President Biden issued a rare rebuke of Israel in which he said the military operation in Gaza had gone over the top. Critics have pointed out that there has been no practical change, however, in America's approach. They continue to give military aid to Israel. But the king will be hoping to use his influence with America. Jordan is incredibly important as a regional ally to the Americans. The king also enjoys a very close relationship with America. He takes pride in his close relationship with President Biden, all the presidents before him. But it is a very difficult, tricky balancing act because in Jordan there has been much unrest amongst a lot of people. There's been street protests because of what's happening in Gaza, many calling on the Jordanian leadership to abandon its peace treaty with Israel, to abandon its defense agreements with America. That's not likely to happen. The king will want to use his influence. So this meeting with President Biden has been a very important roll of the dice in that sense, in order to make his feelings heard to America.
We can now cross live and speak to Dr. Alam Saleh, who is Senior Lecturer in Politics and International Relations at Australian National University, but is joining us today from Leeds in the north of England. Welcome to the programme. We've heard about the concerns from King Abdullah and also President Biden. They are by no means alone. What would be the diplomatic consequences of an assault on Rafah?
Well, definitely would have many different consequences. First of all, diplomatically speaking, it would internationalize and regionalize the conflict into Egypt, involving Egypt. That means learning from the past. Egypt knows that hundreds of thousands of refugees moving to Egypt would have security consequences, like what happened in the early 1970s when Palestinian refugees have caused and posed posed threat for Jordan internally. That means, of course, many militants might move to Egypt with the refugees, and this is something that Egypt cannot accept. Politically speaking, it would stop any kind of chance for the ceasefire. We know that the United States, Qataris, and Egyptian officials are gathering today in Cairo to discuss the 6-week ceasefire, and this would be definitely compromise such attempt. Economically speaking, this would have some economic burden for Cairo, like what happened in 2011 onwards, when hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees moved to Lebanon and Turkey. This is also something that Egypt is not ready to pay for. This is also difficult for Cairo to accept, simply because it will be very uncertain whether these refugees will be allowed to return to Gaza one day, or if any, when. So this might be very prolonged process that might undermine security, economy, and political situation of Egypt in such a war.
So this then puts added pressure on Egypt to add momentum to the peace process. What realistically can it do? What can it bring to the table?
Well, of course, it's very complicated. It's a multi-layered issue. Over 1.3 million Palestinians are gathering in an area smaller than 64 kilometers square, and this might end with a humanitarian catastrophe, of course, with a security catastrophe. But for Tel Aviv, of course, they believe that they have started a war, and if they stop it here, it would be an unfinished game, and therefore they cannot accept any kind of compromise with this part of Gaza, because they believe many militants, Hamas militants, are amongst these over 1 million people gathering in the southern part of Gaza.
Dr. Alam Saleh, thank you very much indeed.